Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror. I'm your host, Kevin L. Powers. I am also the festival director and co-program director of Something Wicked Film Festival and Events, and welcome to our podcast. Now, this episode here is a very special episode because it is our 50th episode that we have been recording. I don't know when this will be airing, but I just want you all to know that this is our 50th episode, so we did a little bit of something special for this one. We are doing our top 10 slashers from the aughts, the 2000s, however you want to pronounce it. That's what we're doing. It is a special category that we're doing based on the fact that it has been requested. So what better way to celebrate our 50th episode to delve into slasher films of the 2000s? And with me today is my co-host and special slasher extraordinaire, Sarah Panazzo. Say hi to everyone, Panazzo.
Hi, everyone, Panazzo.
And we are really happy about doing this episode because we don't get to do these type of episodes that often. So it's always a refreshing to do them. So first of all, I just want to tell everyone out there who's listening, I didn't grow up in the 2000s, so the slasher boom, as I like to call it, was one of those things where I kind of saw a lot of movies, but they all kind of blended in. Since I'm a child from the 70s and grew up on the 80s movies, I grew up on the really crappy 90s slasher movies, the repetitive ones, and then by the 2000s, everyone was redoing and revisionizing everything, and we had a lot of great movies then. So this will be a very fun conversation. Panazzo, on the other hand, grew up on these since she's much younger than me.
Yeah, no, this was my pre-high school time. So, watching all the favorite actors on TV, and you have to see all of the movies that they are in. Like, this was a big time for Supernatural, which I was a huge fan of, and both of the leads on that show ended up doing a ton of horror films during this time. So of course I went and saw them. And then you would recognize everybody else you see on TV regularly. So it just keeps going. But I was one of those weird kids who would go into the movie rental place. I don't even think Blockbuster was really big by me at that point. But we would go into the horror section and pick up random movies. And that's how I found some of my favorites. So I do have some of the old young me favorites versus the older me favorites now, because it's quite different.
So this will be very interesting because in the 2000s, I was old enough to have seen almost every film on my list. I probably saw at the theater because I was a overly crazy horror fan back then, and I kind of saw everything. So it'll be interesting to see or listen to the differences between us because we're two different generations. I could afford to go to the movies all the time to see everything back then.
Right? It was like $5 to go to the movies. It was great.
All right, so it's gonna be a little bit different, everyone, because I actually did put mine in order from the number 10 all the way to number 1 being my favorite of the decade, whereas Panazzo kind of got stuck with trying to figure out which was her best ones. So we're gonna be going a little bit crazy right now, but I do want to mention some of the ones that did not make my top 10, but could if I was doing something a little bit more than just 10. And this is a film that a lot of people have not seen or even heard of, but I really like 2007 Shrooms. That's one of my favorite movies. I thought that was a really fucked up movie when I first saw it in 2000. I was like, holy shit, this is some crazy shit I'm seeing. She's fucking on shrooms, and the whole movie is kind of crazy. Now, I don't know how much of this you would think of as your typical slasher, but that's one of the great things about the 2000s. You had this year where everyone was kind of like throwing everything at the wall and seeing what stuck. So I was a really big fan of that one.
Yeah, the 2000s were a great time for remakes. The remakes themselves were not always fantastic, but I mean, we got like When a Stranger Calls, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween from Rob Zombie, Friday the 13th remake. You got like Black Christmas, Prom Night, Sorority Row, just a bunch of remakes of original films that, like I said earlier, had a lot of famous people in them, so everybody wanted to see them, but they were not great.
So you bring up one of the things that I'm sorry, people who are listening, is you're gonna hear a lot of films on my list that are actually remakes of films I actually still liked from the 80s. All right, so I'm gonna start yeah, I'm gonna start off with my number 10 to get us all started, since that was my runner up. Did you have a runner up, by the way?
I had a couple.
Oh,
So The Strangers, I know it's not actually a slasher, but it hunts down people the same way. It's very suspenseful and keeps you on the edge of your seat. And then one of my favorites from when I was younger was Sweeney Todd, a musical slasher. Fantastic, gory, and just beautifully artistic the way it was done, as Tim Burton is. And then May, which was one of my favorites growing up, and it was just a random happenstance find.
uh, you know what? I completely forgot about both of those, and I may should have at least been on my list, and I completely forgot about that. I was not thinking of musicals at all, so I completely forgot Tim Burton's Sweeney Todd, which I think is one of the his better films, his best films.
Yes.
So I'm a little bit, sucks that I missed out on that one, but those are two really good runner-ups.
Mhm.
All right, so my number 10 is I will say it's a great film, but it's one of the most fun franchises that I love. But in 2000, the 2000s, the first one in the Hatchet series was released. I freaking love the Hatchet series, and they are not really great movies, but they're fun as shit. And I was not expecting to like Adam Green's film at all. I was like, this seems like a throwback to the 80s slasher. I don't know if I'm gonna like this. It doesn't seem like it has a brain to it. But the ideal that Victor Crawley has a whole backstory before everything starts off, and then of course in the later sequels when he gets killed multiple times and then keeps coming back, it's like the epitome of 80s slasher franchises and characters. So Hatchet will always be one of my favorites. I've probably seen Hatchet 1, 2, and the new one, Victor Crawley, way more times than I ever should have. And I've read the comic books and all that type of stuff. So I'm inundated to Adam Green's whole Hatchet franchise.
Hatchet was actually on my list too. Like you said, it is so much fun. Like, I know it's another one of those, like, I don't want to say crappy, but it's a silly, silly movie.
Really?
And I laugh so much at it, and it's just so ridiculous. But Kane Hodder's just so good.
Man, I'm a huge Hank Kane Hodder fan. It pains me that I still have yet to meet him at any of the conventions I've gone to. And I've read his book and everything. I think he's a cool. I think just his entire story is amazing, and I think what him and Adam Green did with this franchise is that's another reason why I probably love the franchise, because I've read his book and I was like, oh shit, no, this is actually a really interesting dude. I hope to meet him one day because he does so many conventions.
Well, and the fact that they brought in Tony Todd and Robert Englund to be like little side things, it's like it's just fantastic.
And
It's so lovingly done,
it is.
trying to create another like murder monster.
It is. All right. So, what else is on your list?
So I have this one's a little bit different, but the Final Destination series, because essentially it is a slasher, but the slasher is a force of nature itself. And they're just so much fun to watch. The kills are so random and bizarre. And it just makes it so fun. And I mean, they're iconic. I mean, there's still an entire generation of people who will not drive behind log trucks because of that series. I mean, I think of I can't remember which one it was, that has the lawnmower that shoots the rock across the street or whatever and kills somebody. And I was like, that's still like, it happens. And it's like,
It does.
terrifying.
It does. I've actually done that and seen that happen, where the lawnmower shoots a freaking rock out of nowhere. I was like, oh crap, shit.
But they're such fun movies. And I forgot that almost all of them were made in the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
You had the first four, and then the fifth one came out in 11. And now they're making another one. So
Yep. Hopefully, since we're past the writers and actors strikes, they will actually finish it up for next year's release. So,
Yes.
yeah, really looking forward to that one. Really looking forward to seeing what they do with the franchise. Because, like you, I am actually a huge fan of the Final Destination films, mostly because I love a lot of the death scenes. They're all not great movies. I absolutely love the first
Oh,
one. Probably seen the first one at least a dozen times, if not more. Some of the later sequels, I haven't seen nearly as much, but I really do enjoy the kills, especially the second movie. I really love a lot of what they do in the second movie.
yeah. As the series went on, it got a little more crazy and silly. But I mean, they're very suspenseful for the first two.
All right. So my number ninth is another diversive one because I know there's a lot of people who did not like this one compared to the other film it was paired with, which was in Grindhouse. I really loved Death Proof from Quentin Tarantino. To be honest with you, I don't think it's probably my least favorite of all Quentin Tarantino's films, but I absolutely love the fact that it's Kurt Russell in a fucking car killing people. I like, dude, that's just I've probably seen that movie more times than I should have, especially considering I'm a huge Quentin Tarantino fan. But this is the film I put on the bottom of his list, but I've probably seen it the most because it's so damn much fun. Kurt Russell, we've had our conversations about Kurt.
Yes, we've had our conversations about Kurt Russell.
I can watch shitty movies with Kurt Russell in it all day long and still enjoy the fuck out of them. And that is how I feel about Death Proof. A car, Kurt Russell killing people. Ah, shit, I just love that movie.
I mean, the whole Grindhouse double feature thing is genius, and so many things that came from that entire thing, especially the commercials becoming real movies, is super impressive. It's so much fun when a bunch of directors collaborate like that.
Yeah.
One of my other ones is High Tension, which was one of the first foreign films I think I ever saw for horror, and I was just so impressed. It's so crazy and disgusting, but then you get to the end and you're like, oh, okay, I guess. But the whole movie leading up to it is just fantastic. I love the different perspectives, the camera work on it's really impressive. And so was the gore. I mean, it was one of the first big gore movies, I want to say.
Well, it was definitely started the whole French extreme era.
Yes.
Alexander Aja's craziness in a lot of his films. I loved his films in the 2000s.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you speak more about that because High Tension is actually number 6 on my list. So I'm gonna let you keep talking about that one.
But no, like you were saying, his movies, I forgot how many things he had done and how many of them were actually like translations from other French movies or other concepts that he helped re-release, and they're all fantastic. But yeah, this was, like I said, this was something I remember watching when I was really young, and I was like, cool, let's watch this. It's in French. And I was just very impressed. Still holds up to this day. But yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I'll speak a little bit more about that myself when I get to number 6. But the thing about Alexander Aja, I just like to tell everyone out there is that over the years, I guess for me, he's become the king of remakes, having done the remake to Mirrors, which is a Japanese film, I believe. The original one, Into the Mirror, was Japanese. And then, of course, he did The Hills Have Eyes, and then he did Piranha 3D. I think the guy just loves one-upping everyone on fucking remakes.
Yeah, because I feel like the only original one he did was Crawl. Everything else, I think, is a remake.
The guy loves to do those, and he's so he does them so well. We'll be talking a little bit more about him later in this one, because he makes my list a couple times. But High Tension is a great one. All right, where were we at? We were at that. Oh, so we've already mentioned my number 8. Or you mentioned my number 8, and I'm just gonna elaborate on it a little bit more because I didn't realize how few people actually saw this remake. I kept thinking everyone saw this fucking remake, and I didn't think anyone. But Sorority Row the remake to House of Sorority Row is my number 8. I love this movie. It was like the epitome of a really good slasher movie that improved on the original. And I'm a huge fan of the original House of Sorority Row, and I just love the fact that these two movies are so different. The thing I love the most about the remake is the fucking weapon, the tire iron with the different weapons on each end. And I had to get a prop replica of that, so I have a little prop replica of that. But every time I mention this remake to people, it's like, what? That movie sucked. I'm like, man, it was awesome. I love the kills in that movie. I love everyone that died in it. I love the fact that I love the way the cinematography in this movie, and I love the music, especially the score for the movie. But I just want more people to watch it. I just thought it was a great movie. I don't know what you thought of it, but I know I thought of it.
I mean, I thought they're all very campy and fun. Like all of those remakes of that time. Like I said, Prom Night, Sorority Row, like Black Christmas, they all kind of fall in that same genre. And I think all of them film like essentially the same girls. Because you just got so many of the fake Scream Queens. They were like, who's the most popular right now? Let's make her the Scream Queen in this movie. And just never followed through on any of them. But no, they're all a lot of fun.
I think I agree with you on that. I think they were all trying to make a bunch of Scream Queens out of random actresses, and I don't think there was a good follow through with any of them.
No.
I think what's her face from Scream is about the closest you're gonna get.
Yeah, Neve Campbell is the closest thing I think we got to a Scream Queen around then. That and Anna Faris from Scary Movie.
Yeah. So, all right. So, what's your next one?
Speaking of both of those, I've got Scary Movie because the first one was a parody of all slasher movies. I think it was so well done. It's ridiculously funny. I mean, it's the first 2 or 3 Scary Movies, I think, are the ones that hold up, and then they did a deep dive. But no, Scary Movie was ridiculously good for its time when it came out. And like I said, it still holds up to this day. It's got every single thing in it that you would want. I mean, all the characters are named after the characters that they are imitating, especially the actors' names. And there's a lot of love and a lot of gore in them. And they're so much fun. There's so much camp. But yeah, I wish we had more.
You know what? I need to rewatch those movies. I have only ever seen the first 3 once. I've been told I need to rewatch them because when I was, and this is the thing about being different generations between us, is the fact that when I watched those movies, they're coming out long after I was done with the parody movies, with the naked movies and stuff like that. So I didn't take to them as well as that generation did, your generation did. But I've been told that I need to go back and reevaluate them now that the comedy has been integrated into the horror genre much more than it was when I was growing up. My 80s and 90s movies didn't have a whole bunch of horror comedies. But by the 2000s, you've mentioned a great thing, that there was a lot more comedy, a lot more camp, a lot more them actually, what do you call it, being self-referential to those movies,
Yes.
80s and stuff like that. I need to rewatch those and reevaluate those movies in the 2000s with a new eye.
Yeah.
That's on my list to rewatch.
There's a lot of good things that come from them. Like there's lines that live rent free in my head constantly, like Officer Duty reporting for duty, because you have a different version of Dewey from Scream, and then the second one where you've got God, what's his name from Schitt's Creek, and he's like, "Take my strong hand," and it's not a strong hand.
All right, so that's one of the this is why we have these conversations. That's why I need to rewatch that movie.
Yeah, they're so much fun. Like I said, stop at 3. Don't go any further.
Oh my God. All right. So my number 7 is another remake. So there's going to be several remakes on here. But I think this is probably the one that took the technology of 3D to its heyday, which is My Bloody Valentine 3D, which me and a bunch of my friends saw at the theater in 3D because 3D was new, and we were trying to watch the horror films in 3D because they always did it much better, in my opinion, than some of the other people. We watched that, and we actually watched Piranha 3D at the 3D, a bunch of us. And we were like digging this shit in 3D. And My Bloody Valentine, in addition to having a great story and some good actors and a mystery within it, also has some great kills and was all done in a really well done 3D. So My Bloody Valentine is going to be up there on that list.
Uh, Going off of my last movie, Scream 3. I know it is not the greatest in the series, but I think it is so much fun and it pokes fun at Hollywood so much and it is so well done. Going back to it now, the jokes they make and the things they point out are ridiculous. And I mean, it, especially after like Weinstein and everything else that happened, making the jokes about that in his movie is ridiculously fun, super cheesy, but I love it. I love Scream. It's probably my favorite franchise.
I kind of agree with you. I don't see why people be hating on Scream 3 so much. Dude, it has Parker Posey, Lance Henriksen. It pokes fun at Hollywood and it's making fun of the Scream franchise itself. I actually really, really like Scream 3, and I don't know why so many people didn't like it.
And there's so many cameos in it that are also poking fun at it. Like, I mean, you get Carrie Fisher, you've got quite a few others, but yeah, it's so well done, and it does the exact same thing it's doing. It's mocking itself.
I really, really, I agree with you. I really enjoyed the first three Screams a lot when I saw them. And at the time, I was dating someone much younger than me who liked them a lot more than I did, but I still really enjoyed them. Especially the first two. But when I got to three and it had Parker Posey in it, who I simply adore Parker Posey,
Mhm.
I was like, this is perfect. And then Lance Henriksen, who is one of my favorite character actors of all time, was also in it, and I was like, oh yeah, see, this is, and you're making fun of Hollywood and horror in the slash. You know what? I could use a little bit of this, you know. And so I that's one of my favorite. I guess part three of any franchise. Scream 3 is going to be one of my favorites. Probably in the top five, most definitely. I just wish a lot more people would get appreciated more than what they do, at least online.
Mhm.
What number are we on? Oh, we just did. I just did number 7. So that way, this is number 6 is. Oh, whoa! This is my high tension one. So I'm just gonna say a few words because you said so much about high tension already. And the thing is, with high tension, when I saw that at the theater after all of the film festival reviews of the movie, say, "Oh, this is the glorious." Most hard-hitting horror film ever, and I saw it at the theater when it first came out in this little bitty theater, art house thing. And then, of course, when you get to the end, like so many people at the time in the movie, I was like, it was a gut punch to everything else that you had watched
Yes.
in the movie. And so for a long time, I was like, this is the greatest movie that I hate.
Yes.
For a long time. That was how I was until now. Over the years, when I reevaluated it and I listened to some of the stuff that Alexander Aja had spoken about the film, I kind of like say, you know what? I'm gonna let that motherfucker do whatever he wants to, and I'm just gonna go with it. And so when I watch it now, it's like that's okay. It's okay if the whole first three quarters don't make any fucking sense to the twist at the end. It's okay. I was like, yeah, it's still a great movie. It's still gory as hell. It's still suspenseful. I'm a little saddened that Alexander Aja hasn't decided to do some type of weird fucking sequel to it,
Mhm.
because I'm sure he could. But High Tension has made it higher on my list than it was when I first saw it, and I've seen it a lot now.
Mhm.
Uh,
Because
I
you're right, that gut punch at the end. It's like it really catches you if you haven't seen it. And then on further rewatching, you're like, but now none of this makes sense.
none of it makes sense. But that's okay. I kind of see it
It's still good though.
I kind of see it as the movie Possession, if you've ever seen it with Sam Neill, where most of that shit doesn't make any fucking sense either.
Yeah.
You just kind of going in for the experience of being really watching a movie that's really fucked up in its aesthetic, and you're going on a weird journey, so to speak. And that's how I see High Tension now. So I'm
Mhm.
perfectly fine with the ending. And anyone out there who says that they hate the ending, go out there and rewatch it with new eyes. They'll try and make it all make sense. Just go out there and watch it for a gut punch balls to the wall experience that starts and never lets up to the very end. And just think of it that way, and you'll enjoy it a hell of a lot more.
My next one, I I remember stumbling upon it when I was a kid, and it took me because we didn't really have the internet. I watched bits and pieces of it on TV. I didn't watch it from the start, so I had no idea what was going on, but it instantly grabbed me from the scenes I watched. And it kind of just hid in the back of my mind for a long time until I figured out what it was. Uh, and it is one of the best and worst movies I have ever seen, but it has so many good one-liners. The story behind it itself is really interesting and great, but Mindhunters is I love the cast. The one-liners are, I mean, we get like, I guess we found out his weakness, bullets. But the whole movie, the premise, the way that people start dying is very smartly done. The people who were cast in certain roles, I could tell it was trying to follow up with Silence of the Lambs, and they were trying to make a new Jodie Foster, and it did not work. But it's still so much fun to watch and rewatch. I mean, it's Val Kilmer and a bunch of other people, and it's just great.
So I did not watch Mindhunters until like 2 years ago for the first time. Because I had known it existed. It just went over my radar because I didn't see it at the theater. I completely forgot about it when it came out on DVD, video, and streaming and everything. And then one day I just blind was like, I hadn't seen Mindhunters. Let me watch that movie. It has a good cast in it. And I was like, holy shit, this movie's weird. But it's so different from everything that I
Yes.
had seen before then. I was like, oh, this is actually kind of clever because of the cast. Because they have this amazing cast in this movie that no one remembers. Uh, and I think a lot of the movies from the 2000s did that. You touched on something earlier today when you had all these television actors making movies, and you had these veteran actors like Val Kilmer doing these random horror movies for the hell of it. And I agree with you. I think it was one of the big draws, and that's one of the things that allows something like Mindhunters to actually endure because you're watching it, you say, there's all these young cats in this movie, and you got
Hmm.
these veteran actors in here as well in a movie that they probably should have said no to begin with. But what the hell?
But yeah, like I said, super fun. It's a really creative story. The kills are really well done and really creepy and gross at certain points. Um, but yeah, the fact that you've got like LL Cool J, Christian Slater, uh, just fantastic.
Oh my god, that movie was so crazy. Oh, so yes. Uh on you know what, on my next film, which is my number five film, people may remember the first movie, and but then they'll forget like the eight sequels that they made that no one even realized they made sequels to. This franchise became something like the Children of the Corn franchise, or what's another undying franchise where they keep making fucking sequels to. But I'm gonna go with 2003's Wrong Turn, which I really fucking love. And they've got like 20 fucking remakes and a new one coming out this year. I'm like,
Oh my God.
they should just let this franchise die. I don't know who keeps. Well, I don't know anyone other than me who keeps watching these damn movies. But I think there's like 10 of them now, and they just keep popping them out. But the original Wrong Turn had some really creative kills in it, and it had Elijah Dushku in it. So she was, hot off of was it Buffy the Vampire Slayer? Yeah.
Yes.
So and she was kicking ass and still taking names. And I think this is one of her early solo film roles where she was just, and I think it was Desmond Harrington was also in here too. Those two, and they did an excellent job in this movie. That's more or less like a backroads version of The Hills Have Eyes. So I still think that the original Wrong Turn still holds up. I still think some of the kills are amazing because it was gory. It had you started with the action and it never stopped. I think it holds up really well. That's why it's so high on my list. But the rest of the sequels, not nearly as well. Most of them are all pretty forgettable, except for the one with Harry Rollins in it. Henry Rollins. That one's fun because he's in it, but other than that, the rest of them are pretty completely forgettable.
My next one is one of my favorites on multiple levels. I absolutely love Clive Barker. I love his short stories. They are brilliant. They're so well done. And when they adapt his work, it tends to be really well done, uh, in my opinion. But Midnight Meat Train is another one of those movies where you have like Vinnie Jones and who was it? Bradley Cooper.
Bradley Cooper.
And I didn't know what I was expecting going into this movie. I expected a murderer on a train, but I did not expect this movie. Uh I mean, it's Clive Barker, so it's very smartly done. The twists and turns in it are really fun, and it is grotesque.
You know what? It's probably one of my favorite Vinnie Jones films that's not directed by
Guy Ritchie.
Guy Ritchie.
Yes.
I think Guy Ritchie was able to do Vinnie Jones justice, and then Vinnie Jones went off and did a lot of random shit. But I really loved him in The Midnight Meat Train. Bradley Cooper, I don't think will ever do another horror film again.
No.
I think, like most actors in their early careers, they do a horror film and then they don't ever go back. But I think this one, I agree with you. I think it was a really strong adaptation of the story. I think it was really well done by, I can't pronounce his fucking name, Kinemura. Gosh.
Yeah.
You know, the guy who did Versus. I think it was really well done. I thought it was a great movie, and I did not put this on my list. I completely forgot about the fucking movie. I was like, oh yeah, that was a really good one.
Yeah. It I remember watching the trailers for it when I was younger, and when I lived I was close to Chicago growing up. So every time we would like go out there, I was terrified that this was going to be a real thing.
Oh, well, it has that feeling like like the other Clive Barker adaptation, Candyman, the original Candyman, where it's where it has a strange little mythos and a mythology behind it, which a lot of Clive Barker stories actually do. I don't know why they actually do, and it does a really good job of integrating that type of mythology into this whole city and the story that's there. So hands off to you for remembering it. I haven't seen it in fucking years. I completely forgot.
I know. It's one of those ones that just kind of sits in the back of your mind sometimes. And like, especially like Vinnie Jones, like this is the creepiest I have ever seen him. And he's so fantastic.
All right. So my next one is I keep picking random weird ones. So people who are listening to this, don't take me the wrong way of some of these movies. But I love 2009's The Collector. I don't know if anyone saw that other than me, actually. I know I'm like the guy who was waiting for the sequel because I love The Collector. I thought it was the cinematography for the first one was amazing. Some of the shots that were in this movie were simply amazing. I actually like the fact that you don't see who the collector is by the end of the movie, but the actor, check, what's his name? I gotta look him up. Josh Stewart, who I had never heard of before I saw this damn movie, I think is absolutely brilliant in this movie. I actually really liked him in the sequel too, and I've been actually watching some of his other films that he's done because he's a writer and director himself, and he's done a lot of smaller films. So I'm really hoping that he comes back for the third movie, which has been in the, I think they started shooting it, then it stopped. Because it shut down and they keep saying they're not going to be able to finish it and they're going to go back and finish it. I'm like, dude, just fucking make this third movie so I can have a trilogy of these damn movies. I love The Collector and I love The Collection. I love these movies. I think they're very clever and different as a slasher movie. And that's one of the great things about the 2000s. We saw a lot of different slasher movies. You saw the funny ones, like Hatchet. And then you say this one and Midnight Meat Train, which are dead serious. So.
Yeah. And I agree. These were great movies. They were so incredibly frustrating, though, because you never learn anything. And I hated that part. I love the rest of the movie, but I was just so disappointed that, like, it's a complete mystery the entire time. You have no idea why or who or whatever is going on.
Well, I guess the 2000s, if there was nothing left, you either had something like Scream, where it's a big mystery until the very end and everything's revealed, or you had something like this, where like High Tension, where everything's fucking crazy. It doesn't make any sense. There is no big reveal. You don't get to. Yeah, it was. I think the 2000s were that decade where every filmmaker kind of threw everything at the wall and tried to
Hmm.
see what audiences were going to like.
Yeah.
So, what's your next one?
My next one is A Perfect Getaway. Uh, it's it's very smart. It's another one of those high suspense movies where the entire time you're trying to figure out like, okay, who are the killers in this?
Mhm.
And it's realistic, which is super scary. And the actors are just fantastic. I mean, you've got what's his name? Timothy Zahn or Steve
Yeah,
Zahn and
Steve
Timothy
Zahn.
Oliphant and Mia Jovovich.
I can't remember the other girl's name, even though I should remember her
I
name.
know, I
Uh,
always forget.
but you know what? That is of the 2000s. That's probably one of that movie has one of the most effective twists
Yes.
halfway through the film. I think that is such a gut punch twist that is done correctly. I think it's
Yeah.
amazing.
And this is another one of those with the right actors, the twist is pulled off really well. Um, just because of everything else going on in the movie. It's just super impressive.
Yeah. So one of the great things is with the twist on this one, and I'm a huge fan of David Twohy, and this is the most unusual film that he's ever written and directed. I For those who don't know who he is, he did like the Pitch Black and The Arrival, Chronicles of Riddick, and then he goes off and does A Perfect Getaway, which is like the completely opposite of
Opposite
everything
of
else.
everything.
And so when this twist comes halfway in, I'm like, I wasn't expecting this at all.
Yeah.
Holy shit, did he do a clever way of presenting this? Because I had no clue whatsoever.
Hmm.
So yes, another one I didn't put on my list. I completely forgot because you know what? I didn't think of it as a slasher, but it most certainly is a slasher film. The way it is presented, how suspenseful it is the entire way through the film.
Yeah, you just don't see any of the actual slashing.
Very,
Um, but yeah, I also have to laugh because I always forget that young Chris Hemsworth was in it.
oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. And I always think that's really funny. And I was like, okay, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I actually had my wife watch it for the first time I think 3 years ago because we're both Steve Zahn fans and she's
Hmm.
never seen it. I was like, oh, you have to watch this movie.
Yes.
And I'm a huge I used to love everything he's in. He doesn't do as much stuff now as he used to. But that guy has been in some shitty movies, but he has been the best parts of those shitty movies.
Absolutely. I love anything that he does. He is
Uh,
just way too much fun.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So, where are we? Oh, my number three is a foreign film, and I'm going to cheat because I am a huge fan of Cold Prey 1 and 2. I think these are two extremely underrated films. I got a gut punch with these movies because I kind of watched the first one on a whim. A friend of mine said, "Oh, Kevin, you should watch this movie Cold Prey. It's a great little slasher movie." I was like, I haven't even heard of this fucking foreign film. I usually hear about everything. I have never heard of Cold Prey before. And so I watched the first one, and I was like, holy shit, this movie's good. Have you ever seen Cold Prey, by the way? You
No, I haven't. I
definitely
was just looking it up.
you I recently found a dubbed cop not a dubbed subtitle copy of the third one. I did not like the third one because the third one is like a prequel. I think the first two are extremely strong films. I love the idea of this guy who's in a I guess dilapidated hotels building and these a gang of friends end up going there, getting stranded there on accident, and then they get killed one by one. But everything is really suspenseful, and the main actress, which I can't remember her name, is phenomenal because she's in both the first and second one. She's I mean, I wasn't expecting anything from this movie. This was a movie I was not expecting anything from because I had never heard of it. I wish I could remember the friend that recommended it to me because he's always recommended. I got several friends like you who recommend me movies. I put on a little list, and then I randomly find them and say, "Oh, that's the movie that Panasso talked about. Let me get that movie." All right, and then I watch it, and I'm like, holy shit, this movie's good. Why did I wait a year to finally watch this damn?
Same.
And that's how Prey was. It was on my list for forever. And I saw the first two maybe 5 years ago, and I spent about 2 years trying to get the third one. I got a foreign region 01 so I can watch it and it's subtitled. And it came with all three of them, so I have all three of them as a box set now. And I just saw it and I was like, I could have waited on this one. It's a prequel. I didn't really need to know how the killer came about.
Yeah.
I getting off topic for a second. Prequels, like when you do the prequel, I really don't care as much about where the killer came from. Like that's not nearly as interesting. But the first two extremely strong films, I would suggest like a double feature because one leads into the other. It's like watching one big long movie. They just continued after the first one. So, Cold Prey 1 and 2, check them out if you haven't heard about them. They are actually really great movies of the 2000s.
Well, I'm adding that one to my list, and I'll let you know how it is in a year and a half.
Don't be better than me.
No, I do the same thing. I have the ever-growing list, and eventually I get around to watching it. I'm like, why did I wait?
Yeah, exactly.
So my last two are two of my favorites. They're both kind of in the same genre that I love, which is the horror comedies.
Okay.
But the first one I'll talk about is Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. It is one of the best mockumentaries I have ever seen. And it's just so brilliant. It's very self-referential to all the other horror movie monsters and how they choose their victims and hunt their prey. And just the behind the scenes-ness of like, well, you got to do cardio because you got to walk really fast. And then you got to be able to use like fishing line to like rig doors and windows to shake and make noise to distract people. And it's just so well done. You love the main couple characters, the documentary crew. Leslie Vernon himself is a whole lot of fun. And it is such a great movie. I love it so much.
I'll agree. I think that is a very underrated film and it doesn't get talked about more often. I think because there's not a bunch of fucking sequels based on it, I think it gets kind of overlooked. But every time I come across anyone who wants to watch a really good slasher movie I kind of put this in my found footage list. I always recommend that one. It's usually one of the top five I always recommend. And I'm not the guy who really likes the comedy stuff as much as you do, but I thought that one was absolutely brilliant from beginning to end. I think that is one that a lot of people who may have never seen it before should check it out. Because it is a great example of slasher films from the 2000s, both the seriousness of the subject matter and the fact that it's really fucking funny.
Yeah, I mean, I recommend it for every horror fan because it is a great behind the scenes look at how Michael and Freddy and Jason all do their jobs.
Uh-huh. So my number two is going to be another comedy, and I don't know how many people laugh at it as much as I do, but I laugh at it all the time, and it is 2006's Severance, the British movie.
That was another one I love.
I have seen Severance so many times now, and I'm always laughing at that movie because of the characters. The characters are. You wouldn't think that the movie, the concept of these people going out on a work venture to become better employees and all that type of stuff would get together and just had this random incident where they become prey. But it's actually really funny. And the funny is derived from the characters. And it's actually really, really gory as well. Some of the kills are absolutely amazing. And you're not being, I guess, suspensefully, you're not turning a blind eye to some of the gore. And when you look at the gore, it's actually quite fucking funny. Which is, like I said, we've been talking about this, and the 2000s were really good at integrating that comedy and gore in the horror at the same time. I think anyone who tried to do it before the 2000s probably weren't nearly as successful as a lot of the movies from the 2000s. I think the 2000s was like they I don't know if the torture porn had taken hold yet, or if the spoof comedies with Scary Movie had taken a hold yet, or everyone became self-referential. But somewhere in between, the 2000s a lot of filmmakers were able to integrate all these things and make it really successful for these films. And so Severance I try to tell a lot of people about this film, but like a lot of films, people they don't hear about these films. Severance hasn't made a huge impact. I think there's like 2 other movies called Severance and now a television show called Severance. And, the title gets buried because it's such a common title.
Yes. So. But it is very well done. And you're 100% right. The 2000s was a weird time we started getting that like torture porn because you got like Hostel and everything else like that. But then at the same time, you have all these comedies like Scary Movie coming out, and it was a very interesting time because it could go one way or the other, very hard in either direction.
Yeah.
So what is your number 1 pick, Kevin?
My number 1 is both a remake and an Alexander Aja film, because I had to bring him back up again. And it is the Hills Have Eyes remake. I have always been a huge fan of Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes. Do not get me wrong. But Alexander Aja when he did a remake, tended to one-up almost every remake he ever did. I think his Mirrors is better than Into the Mirror. I think his Piranha 3D is better than Piranha 3 or Piranha. I don't think as much as I love, Joe Dante's Piranha, it doesn't hold up as well in recent viewings, and we'll discuss that in a future episode, since we have a future episode based on Joe Dante's Piranha coming up. But I think The Hills Have Eyes created a film that was both politically motivated and socially motivated, while also making one hell of a damn good slasher film that's also suspenseful and gory, and managed to make all the characters fucking interesting. I think that's one of the things that dates Wes Craven's. His original family, all the characters aren't all that interesting. And I think the villains in Wes Craven's are more interesting than the family that you're supposed to be following. I think with the Hills Have Eyes remake that Alexander Aja did, he made both sides and both families equally interesting and compelling to watch, especially when they start killing each other. But the aspect of having the bomb testing area and all the family members being mutated and all that type of stuff added another level to the story that was not there with Wes Craven's. Because, unfortunately, when he made The Hills Have Eyes, you didn't have all that type of story to pull from, those type of aspects to pull from. I just think that Alexander Aja took Wes Craven's basic ideal and made it immensely better. And it's one of my favorite remakes of the entire decade, which is why it's so high on my list. That's how I feel about The Hills Have Eyes. And the less said about the sequel, the better. So we will forget about the sequel completely, because that movie is trash.
Yeah, it's funny how many of these movies get like torn down. Like you were saying with Wrong Turn, like the first one's really good, and then they have all these sequels afterwards that just kind of like kill the franchise, and you're like never watching these again. But my last movie on my list is another comedy. But I love Broken Lizard, known for Super Troopers and Beer Fest and all those other fun ones. But they did Club Dread, which is very unheard of, apparently. I was watching this like once a month when it came out, and I don't know how nobody else had seen this film and it didn't do well. But it is so much fun to see a basically Jimmy Buffett Margaritaville Island overtaken by an obsessive killer who is then killing people based on the songs that he sings. Bill Pullman is one of my favorite actors. Bill Paxton is one of my favorite actors, and he does a great job as this Jimmy Buffett character, and it's just so much fun. The kills are really good. Uh and just the comedy with the music and the way that they do things. I mean, there's an entire playable Pac-Man field scene where the hunter is trying to kill one of the guys in the maze. Um, but no, it's really well done. When it's trying to be a comedy, it's funny. When it's trying to be scary and have jump scares, it works. But it's just a great movie. The cast is fantastic and they play so well off of each other as they normally do. But yeah.
You know what? Bill Paxton, I think, is what for me because I wasn't really familiar with the Broken Lizard people before Club Dread. I believe Club Dread came out after Super Troopers and Beer Fest, right? Or was
It
it
was before Beer Fest, after
Okay,
Super Troopers, I believe.
so I didn't see Super Troopers until I saw Super Troopers 2.
Mm,
I had seen Beer Fest. And then I guess I went back and saw Club Dread. I kind of forget which one I've seen. And for the longest time, those were the only two movies of the Broken Lizard I ever seen. And so I always thought they were great because the two movies of them I've seen that I absolutely loved. And I was saddened that I hadn't seen Super Troopers until the second one came out. My wife is the one who got me into Super Troopers, and now I love the guys Broken Lizard and the guys who spent off to do their Tacoma FD show, which I think
hmm
is absolutely fucking brilliant. But Club Dread, I think, is probably my favorite horror spoof. Like I wasn't into scary movie nearly as much as you were,
hmm
but Club Dread is probably the one I think got it right because I kept thinking over the years, I kept thinking this way. They got the concept that I still know what you did last summer was trying to get, but
Yeah.
didn't get because I hate that movie. I hate that sequel. I thought that was the dumbest thing known to mankind. Another sequel that they shouldn't have made to a great original. But them going to an island and there being like a slasher there, I'm like, this is so fucking stupid and a little karaoke thing. But I thought Club Dread did everything right. Uh, and it saddens me that I hadn't seen it in years until we mentioned it, of course.
hmm
I was like, oh shit, I forgot about Club Dread. I need see this some of these movies I need to bring back up. I don't watch movies repeat watch as much as I used to when I was younger. That's an unfortunate thing when you get older, and the fact that streaming services have made too much content that I have to keep up with. So I don't get to rewatch some of my favorite movies. I will say that I have seen Beer Fest a fucking shit ton of times. Because when that came out, that was the shit. So we kind of
hmm
watched that a lot. Super Troopers, like I said, I hadn't seen that till the second one. When I saw the second one first at the theaters, then went back to watch the first one. I know it's sacrilegious, but I just didn't get as much of it from this. I went to the movies to see Super Troopers 2, and I was like, I don't get a lot of this stuff. Maybe I should go back and watch the first one. So I did. And my wife is now, I think, seeing Super Troopers 1 and 2 a billion times because those are two of her favorite comedies. And so now I've seen them a billion times. And so now I'm a slamming, oh my God, Pumpkin Lizard fan. I was thinking of their own other movie, Slam and Salmon. If you haven't seen Slam and Salmon, that's also funny.
Yeah, I this is one of my comfort movies. So like I have a bad day, I put this on. I love it so much. Uh and
I'm ashamed that I haven't seen it in years, and it's so hard to find now.
yeah.
But when I watch it again, I'm gonna have to make the wife watch it again because I don't think she's seen Club Dread. No, she saw Club Dread. There's some of their other films after Super Troopers, like she hadn't seen Slam and Salmon until I found that for her, and probably some of the other ones because she's more of a fan than I am, but she's seen the popular ones. So, but Club Dread for horror fans and comedy fans, that is a great number one up there. So we went from comedy horror with you at the very top to hardcore horror with me with the Hills Have Eyes remake. So the 2000s, everyone,
Like
is
we said, it's an interesting time.
is an interesting decade because they had a lot of everything. And there's such a great eclectic taste in both of our lists, both comedy horror, hardcore horror, remakes,
Hmm.
political fucking horror movies. I think or fun ones like Final Destination. I think we just had a very wide range of slasher movies.
Yes.
Oh, gee. So any other words you'd like to tell everyone about the slasher movies of the 2000s, Panazzo?
I don't know. It's definitely one of my favorite times for slashers. Because yeah, we tried to do the 80s slashers and I realized I'd only seen 8 and they were almost all like some of the main ones like Friday the 13th or Halloween, or Child's Play. And I was just like, oh, well, I guess I haven't seen that many, but then I come to the 2000s and I'm like, I've seen all of these. And it's so eclectic. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm glad we did the 2000s instead of the 80s because the thing about the 80s is they were stuck with the same type of slasher movie.
Hmm.
There is no one out there who will not deny that the 80s, as well remembered as the 80s slasher boom was, there was a ton of movies that were exactly the same thing. Always a killer in the mask, killing kids, either at a freaking camp, in a sorority house, a house in general, or being chased around the town. And that was generally a lot of slashers from the 80s. Whereas in the 2000s, we got a wide variety of slasher movies. So I'm glad we decided to switch over for that. I'm hoping that people who love the slasher genre take this into account to think that the 2000s were an actual excellent decade for slasher films, especially for all those hardcore 80s horror film fans out there. Take a look at the 2000s, the early 2000s. They had a really great selection of slasher movies out there, and they're eclectic. So even there's a lot of them out there that even non-horror fans could enjoy, which is surprising. But I want to thank everyone for joining us. Our 50th episode for Conversations in Horror. We are really happy to be filming this podcast. We are hoping that you tell your friends, neighbors, countrymen more about what we do here. We'll get back to regular episodes momentarily, where we focus on an individual film. Some of the films that we've discussed today will be regular episodes in the future, so make sure to check us out for those episodes. Some of them have already become previous episodes, so check some of those out as well. I want to thank everyone for joining us for Conversations in Horror. Don't forget to check out my Patreon only podcast, Conversations in 4Color, which delves into comic books, manga, and comics. Also, we have a lot of great things coming up in the future from everyone here at Something Wicked Entertainment. Have a good day. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, produced by Kevin L. Powers, executive produced by Kelly A. Inoka, and originally filmed via Zoom technology. Conversations in Horror is hosted by Kevin L. Powers and co-hosted by various horror film lovers and filmmakers. To learn more about Mr. Powers, please make sure to check out his Patreon page and other social media platforms. Conversations in Horror is copyright 2024 Broken Lighthouse Pictures production.